letters EWTN to 55000. Wait for our response and then text us your first name and your brief question. Message and data rates may apply. And of course, you can always send us an email. ctc@ewtn.com is the address, ctc@ewtn.com. All right, we have a Friday program ready to roll here, but we need to hear from you. As you know, or may know, calls tend to go really quickly and fill up very quickly on Fridays. Maybe people want to get those questions answered before they head into the weekend. Whatever reason, call now, 833-288-EWTN. All right, here we go. Charles Beery is our producer. Also, Ryan Penny is our phone screener. Jeff Burson is not doing social media because he has the day off today, so I believe Mr. McCall is tackling things. Meanwhile, I'm Tom Price along with Dr. David Anders.
Tom Price, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you, sir?
Oh, fair to middling.
Weekend plans? Anything going?
Carting kids around, driving here and there.
Yeah, you'll have a good time.
Getting nowhere fast.
That's part of the fun. Here's an email we received from Pat, who says, "Hey, Tom and Dr. Anders, I was trying to explain to my brother how you once said love is not an emotion. My brother's response was, well, I've never heard that before, and the dictionary doesn't say that. I feel as though I didn't do a good enough job explaining and would love some help in responding to him. Thanks, Pat."
Okay, thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. So we're talking about your Pat's brother, right?
Yes.
Okay. I assume that Pat loves her brother, and and I hope that her brother reciprocates. Now, in loving her brother, she ever get mad at him? Ever hurt for him? Ever be joyful at his coming? Ever be impatient if he didn't do something on time? Ever be grateful and happy if he gives her a gift? In other words, there are multiple emotional states that are all constitutive of her act of loving her brother. It's not reducible to some particular emotional state. Rather, her love for her brother is her settled disposition of goodwill towards him, desiring, wanting, seeking to bring about what is actually good for him, and also wanting to be in union with him, wanting to have a relationship with him, reciprocal relationship with him. And both of those things are consistent with any number of different emotional states. So it's a dispensation, an orientation towards another person, but it can't be captured uniquely in a particular emotion, which is a bodily sensation of attraction or aversion, pleasure or pain. It's just not reducible to any of those things. Now, I really don't care what the dictionary says when I'm trying to understand a matter of Catholic faith or doctrine, and the definition of charity as a theological virtue is definitely something that we're interested in here. And I don't really care what Merriam-Webster has to say, but I care a lot about what St. Thomas Aquinas has to say, or what the Catechism of the Church has to say. And so the definition of love or charity, really, the supernatural virtue of charity that I'm very interested in is the one that I derive from St. Thomas. And St. Thomas defines it as the desire of benevolence and of union, desire for union with the beloved. Those two things, benevolence and the desire for union. And both of those are consistent, of course, with any number of emotional states.
Okay.
And it can't be emotion at all, of course, if we are talking about love as it can be ascribed to God, because God, doesn't have neurology. God doesn't have sensible emotions of any kind, because he doesn't have the physiology in which emotions are grounded.
Okay, very good. Pat, thank you so much. By the way, I found out Pat is short for Patrick, but it doesn't matter in this case.
Oh, okay, so his brother.
His brother.
Not her brother.
Exactly right. Here's a quick question we received from our listener comment line overnight.
Good afternoon. My name is Lawrence. My question is, can a Christian use nuclear weapons?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. It's very difficult to see when that could possibly be allowable. All right, so what we do know is that in any kind of just war, it is not lawful to deliberately target non-combatants. You can't do that. You just can't do it. And also any kind of military action that we take in a just war has to be proportionate to the good we're trying to accomplish, right? Or the evils that we're trying to prevent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to come up with a kind of situation, is to imagine one where deliberately targeting, an entire urban center of non-combatants and old women and children and dogs and cats and fruit trees is in any way proportionate to any kind of military aim. And of course, it would also be deliberately targeting the innocent.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we understand that there's such a thing as collateral damage. You try to take out the enemy bunker, and and a shell goes awry and hits somebody it's not intended to. That's one thing, all right. But going out of your way to obliterate everything in your path, in the hopes that you wipe out the bunker as well, that's not permissible. And so when the United States used atomic weapons in the Second World War,
Yes.
there were quite a few Catholic moral theologians around the world who decried that and said this was not morally justifiable. So I won't say absolutely categorically no under any circumstance, but it's hard to see where there's a circumstance where it's permissible.
All right. Well, very good. Thank you so much for your question. In a moment, we're going to get to the phones here. We have, looks like 3 lines in the process of being screened, which means we have 3 lines available for you at 833-288-EWTN. If you have a question for Dr. David Anders, call now, 833-288-3986. It's the Friday edition of Call to Communion here on EWTN. Do stay with us.
Ever wonder how we should pray? I'd like to offer just one. Don't make prayer your work, make work your prayer. In other words, one's faithfulness to their daily duties of state and life and vocation, while at home and at their place of employment, can be offered as a pleasing sacrifice to God when done lovingly, faithfully, and well. It all boils down to the virtue of diligence, doesn't it? Do what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, in the way it's supposed to be done.
Morning Glory. It's Catholic from coast to coast.
Dying is an important part of our life. I've sat at the bedside of many people who are dying, and at my father especially, and important things happened for my father in those last months of his life. He forgave some folks. I have little doubt that the last 6 months of his life were probably more productive for him spiritually than the rest of his years combined.
Morning Glory, talking about everything important to today's Catholic. Monday morning, 7 Eastern, on EWTN Radio. The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
A very wonderful woman I knew had 4 children, and all 4 died. And somebody went up to her one day, and they said, "Oh, what a pity." And she said, "Oh, no, what a blessing." If we don't begin to look at everything with the eyes of Jesus, you will become helpless and hopeless.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
You may have heard about EWTN Radio Essentials, but you're not quite sure what that is. Well, I can tell you what it is. It is a separate radio network from the one that you're listening to right now. Rather than EWTN Radio, it's EWTN Radio Essentials. What are you going to hear on Radio Essentials? You'll hear an awful lot of wonderful things: rosaries, chaplets, Stations of the Cross, devotionals of all sorts every hour, and the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass celebrated every 2 hours, beginning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time with the live broadcast, and then 10 a.m., 12 noon, 2 p.m., etc., all the way up through 10 p.m. Now, you can hear EWTN Radio Essentials 2 different ways. You can check out Essentials on the EWTN app, and also by going to EWTNradio.net. Just click on the Essentials button and you'll start streaming the audio. It will bless you. It'll bless an awful lot of people, as it already has. So do check out EWTN Radio Essentials, perhaps this weekend. All right, if you're ready now, let's go to the phones at 833-288-EWTN. We begin with Teresa on Long Island, listening on her Alexa device. Hey, Teresa, what's on your mind today?
Hi, how are you? Oh my gosh, am I first?
You are first. Lead us off. What have you got for us today?
Thank you. I wanted some clarification on prayer and fasting, because I don't know how to do them together. And I need like a clearer definition on what fasting is, because I just think it's eating no food all day.
Okay, thanks.
But
I appreciate the question. So fasting can be as severe as you feel like you need to be, right? I mean, when the church imposes canonical fasts, she does not ask us to refrain from all eating and drinking. I mean, basically, we just kind of curtail our consumption of food and beverage, but not to completely eliminate it. Now, if you take on fasting as your own private spiritual discipline, you can give up anything, any kind of abstinence or fasting from food or drink that you feel is appropriate and proportionate to your health and situation and spirituality under the guidance of a spiritual director. So it could be something as simple as I'm not gonna have that third cup of coffee that I have every day at 3:00. I mean, you could do that, or
could it be like fasting from social media?
Sure. You could give up anything that might be a distraction in your relationship with God, up to and including a complete fast of no food at all for some length of time, right? And really, it's you and your confessor and your spiritual director discerning the extent of spiritual discipline that you think is appropriate in your situation. I mean, there clearly have been saints and religious and holy people who have undergone very severe penances and fasts in their pursuit of God and the purification of the heart. And, think about the lifestyle of the Desert Fathers, and they survived on a lot less food than anybody in the modern West consumes. And, and pretty bland fare at that. And they lived with many other abnegations as well. Few of us, I think, today are capable of taking up the kind of austerity that they practiced. But there are from time to time there are those in history who take on these kinds of disciplines. And really, my recommendation to you would be work with a spiritual director to determine the nature and the kind of penance that's appropriate to your situation. For many of us, the thing we need to give up may or may not be food. We all kind of know what our predominant faults are and what occasions of sin are for us personally, and that's probably a good place to start. If food is your big thing, start with food. But for somebody else, it might be shopping, it might be social media. It could be anything. So that's my recommendation.
There you go. Teresa, thank you so much for your call. That opens up a line for you right now at 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. The Friday afternoon edition of Call to Communion in progress here on EWTN. Let's go to Maria in Cincinnati, listening on the great Sacred Heart Radio. Hey there, Maria. What's on your mind today?
Hi. I have a question about a particular verse. It's verses Matthew 18:15-19. And in there, it seems to be talking about like the church or church authority. But then there's a verse that's in there, and I'm not sure if there's parallels in the other Gospels for it, but I think it's verse 18 that says, it's very familiar, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, or 2 or more or something, that there I am in the midst. What is the response when someone might look at that and say, okay, well, that means that's church authority, wherever 2 people are, and they're just praying together, it's the same as the church, and that could be just like a church authority or a church structure, just like that. So
yeah, absolutely, sure thing. I understand, and so your question is, when someone points to Matthew 18 and takes that out of context as a justification for some form of congregationalism, right? That would be the way many Baptists and Congregationalists would use this. They'd say, well, wherever you have 2 or 3 in agreement, then you've got Christ's authority comes into play, and we don't need all these bishops and tribunals and all this kind of business. We just have our 2 or 3. Well, you have to read that, of course, in the context of the whole Bible. And ask yourself, when St. Paul dealt with matters of church discipline, is that the way he functioned, right? Did he think that any time you had 2 or 3, say, Corinthian Christians gathered together, if they came to a consensus on an issue, well, that was just the authoritative ruling? Not at all. Not at all. But St. Paul wrote to the Corinthians and said, you guys are nuts. y'all are handling this exactly the wrong way, and you've got to get on board with the universal teaching of the church. You've got to get on board with sacred tradition and the Catholic faith, because I'm thinking about the specific instance in Corinth of the man who was married to his stepmother, and the Corinthians, they got together on this all right, and they all agreed that was fine. They just thought that was hunky-dory. And St. Paul wrote them and said, it is not hunky-dory. It is not hunky-dory. It is against canon law, and it's a grave violation of the dignity of matrimony, and you guys have to get on board with the universal church. So kick this guy out, excommunicate him. And then they went, meep, and they excommunicated him. And in the 2 Corinthians, Paul writes back and says, all right then, now we've done it right. And the guy repented, and he came back into fellowship with the church. So, Jesus did not establish congregational authority as the basis for the church's decision-making. I mean, there's no place in the Gospels where he comes anywhere close to doing that. On the contrary, he establishes specific authorities, commissions them, and says, whoever hears you hears me. Whoever sins you forgive are forgiven. Whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven. And gives the 11, the apostles, the charge of teaching everything he's commanded them till the end of the age, and his promise of divine assistance. And that's clearly the way it plays out in the rest of the New Testament. In Acts chapter 15, when there was a dispute about whether Gentiles had to follow Jewish law, they didn't say, well, let's let 2 or 3 Pharisees get together and they can decide what they want to do in their church, and we'll let 2 or 3 Greeks get together. I started to say geeks. Let 2 or 3 Greeks get together in their church. They can decide what they want to do. No, not at all. Not at all. The apostles and the elders met in Jerusalem and rendered an authoritative decision that they ascribed to the Holy Spirit, and then they imposed it universally on the entire church. That became the law of the church. And you were not at liberty, in some other congregation to make up your own rules. And Acts chapter 14, which comes right before this passage, it's significant to recognize. It says the apostles, they appointed presbyters, that is to say priests, in each of the churches that they founded. It's not congregationalism. It wasn't 2 or 3 people picking one among their number to be the leader. It was apostolic appointment. Apostolic succession was the way the leadership of the church was established. When St. Paul wrote to Titus in Crete, he didn't say, well, I'm glad the guys in Crete voted you in. He didn't say that. He said, Titus, the reason I left you in Crete was so that you could appoint successors to this sacred ministry. When he wrote to St. Timothy, he said, fan into flame the gift that is in you through the laying on of my hands. He didn't say what a good thing it was that the congregation voted you into office. No. Paul ordained Timothy. Paul ordained Titus and gave them the charge of ordaining others to take on the sacred ministry after them. Apostolic succession, not congregationalism. Okay.
Appreciate that. Maria, thank you so much for checking in from Cincinnati. Call to Communion here on EWTN. We do have a line open for you right now at 833-288-EWTN. What is keeping you from becoming a Catholic? Maybe you were an active Catholic years ago and fell away for whatever reason. Maybe you've never been a Catholic and you're thinking about it. It's on your thoughts, but there's this one thing. What is that thing that is keeping you from becoming a Catholic? 833-288-EWTN. Let's go to Martinez now in San Antonio, listening on the EWTN app. Hey, Martinez, what's on your mind today?
Good afternoon. Blessings. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
On Luke 16:9, I don't understand the only little passage there where it says to use dishonest money to make friends. I understand the beginning and the end, but that particular line, I can't rationalize it.
Yes, I appreciate the question. This is a difficult text. I won't make any bones about that. And so I'll give you my, how I understand it. Now, there's room for dispute, and we can have a discussion, and we can read commentaries and come to different conclusions. So I'm not telling you in any way that this is like the authoritative answer, but this is the way I understand it. The point of the parable is that Christians are to make an intelligent and shrewd use of the material resources that we have, basically to win for ourselves treasures in heaven. that we have to be thoughtful and discerning about our use of material wealth, but not to obtain the kind of friendships that would benefit us in this life, but the kind that would benefit us in the next life. And so it's an exhortation to be thoughtful and prudent in the use of wealth, but at the same time to restructure, to reorient our expectations and our understanding of what it is we're actually trying to gain.
Okay. And we thank you so much for your call, Martinez. Let's go now to Joanne. Joanne is calling from one of my favorite places in the entire world, the whole universe as far as I'm concerned, and that would be the beautiful town of Grand Forks, North Dakota, listening on Real Presence Radio. Hey, Joanne, what's on your mind today?
Hello, and thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
And on Monday, Dr. Anders made a comment, and he said there are no eyes in heaven. And I would just like a little clarification about that, or some references about that.
Sure, absolutely. There are no eyes in heaven until the resurrection of the dead. So if you died today, God forbid you should die today, and if you're a blessed person and you've lived a holy life and you went immediately to be with Jesus in the beatific vision, you would go without your body. You wouldn't take your body with you to heaven right now. Your body gets buried in the ground or cremated or whatever. And so you would have your soul separated from your body, your soul in a disembodied state. That is not the way you will spend eternity. The Bible uses the metaphor of being clothed and unclothed. The souls in heaven are unclothed, meaning they don't have their bodies. They're longing to be clothed. They want to get their bodies back. Sure. Because, it's not going to add intensively to your experience of heaven or God, but it will add extensively to your experience of heaven. So we want to be in our natural state, which is embodied. So what are you doing up there without a body? Well, obviously you're not using your material eyes because you left them behind. Nor are you going to use your ears or your nose or your mouth or your feet. You're not going to play the ukulele because you're not going to have fingers and you're not going to have ukuleles. Not until the resurrection. What you will have is an immediate intuition of the divine essence, called the beatific vision, that will satisfy every desire infinitely. So you will be blessed beyond anything you could possibly hope or imagine. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard what God has prepared for those who love Him. You will be absolutely, totally, blissfully satisfied. But you will still be anticipating the resurrection of the body at the end of time. Now, when Christ returns and bodies are raised, they will be transformed in the twinkling of an eye, St. Paul tells us. Body and soul will be reunited, and you will go into eternity in an embodied state where you will have eyes again. This time with 20/20 vision, or 10/10, or 5/5, or whatever it is we get. You'll have perfect eyes, and perfect ears, and a perfect nose, perfect fingers, and that perfect ukulele. But we don't get those until the resurrection of the dead. From between now and then, we will be in a disembodied state. Now, there are two exceptions to that, at least two. All right, Jesus, of course, who rose again in the flesh. So the divine person of Christ has got his body with him. Right. He's connected to his body. And the Blessed Virgin Mary, who was assumed into heaven. She's got hers. Mm-hmm. The rest of us, we've got to wait. We've got to wait.
Very good. Appreciate your call from Grand Forks, Joanne. Thank you so much for that. A real quick question here from their listener comment line as we're heading to break.
Sam, I wonder if it's possible for me to become Catholic.
Okay.
Answer to that, yes.
Yes.
It is more than possible. It is imminently possible. I don't know what your situation is. My recommendation is call up your local Catholic parish and tell them, I would like to become Catholic. And they will take it from there.
That's the best way to get the ball rolling,
That is how you get the ball rolling.
Okay. And a lot of churches have what's called RCIA, which is for adults, people who have been some other faith or perhaps no faith at all. It's about a 9-month process for most people. Some people can kind of, skip to the head of the line like Dr. David Anders.
Well, I went and knocked on my parish door, talked to my priest and said, I hadn't made up my mind yet, but I'm thinking about becoming Catholic. He said, how about November the 16th?
Gotta love that. It's fantastic.
Turned out that was his birthday.
Of course. In a moment, we're going to get to the phones and talk with Andrea in Kansas. We have 2 lines open right now. If you have a question for Dr. David Anders, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986.
The words of Blessed Carlo Acutis.
Sadness is looking at ourselves. Happiness is looking towards God.
And this.
The only thing we have to ask God for in prayer is the desire to be holy.
Hi, I'm Doug Keck. This is an EWTN bookmark brief. Just had the pleasure of speaking with Monsignor James T. Murphy, author of Saints and Sinners in the Cristero War, Stories of Martyrdom from Mexico, published by our friends at Ignatius Press, available through our EWTN religious catalog, EWTNRC.com. Tell us, Monsignor, why did you decide to write this book, and why is it important for people to know about the Cristero War?
It's because it's something that happened south of our borders less than 100 years ago, and most of us don't know that it happened, that the Catholic Church in a Catholic nation like Mexico would be so brutally persecuted. The book profiles 4 saints who were canonized, plus 4 sinners, the sinners being people who were complicit in the persecution in the government of Mexico.
Monsignor James T. Murphy, author of Saints and Sinners in the Cristero War, Stories of Martyrdom from Mexico. This has been a bookmark brief. We appreciate you stopping by. We hope to see you next time.
EWTN, Teaching the Truth.
I just wanted to thank the station for being there on the radio for all of us Catholics. We're all trying to learn something new every day about ourselves and about the world we live in and the people that we interact with. Thank you for taking my questions. I appreciate your willingness to be on the radio these days.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
All prayer intentions are important and meaningful.
Among them are some we feel need an answer from God right away.
Call with your urgent prayer intentions Monday on Take 2 with Jerry and Debbie on most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Call to Communion.
It's Call to Communion here on this Friday afternoon here on EWTN Radio. I'll give you the phone number one more time because we only have one line open, and that is 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. All right, let's go to Andrea. She is in Kansas listening on the EWTN app, a first-time caller. Andrea, what's on your mind today?
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I have a question about converting to Catholicism. My sister and I, we actually do live in Texas, and we came from Germany about 20 years ago, and I converted into Catholicism in Germany. Now, my sister wants to become a Catholic, and the problem is that we can't go to, or she can't go to RCIA because we are teaming truck driving. That means we would have to find some kind of program that is on the internet that we could use to teach her about the faith. And I was wondering if you can recommend anything.
Yes, I can, actually. So first of all, if your sister is unable to attend RCIA, it is not an absolute requirement of the Church to become Catholic that you attend RCIA. I myself am a convert to the faith. I did not attend RCIA. And so the most important thing is just to make your intentions known to the pastor of your parish, and either the pastor can arrange for your instruction, or he can delegate that job to someone else, maybe like a deacon or something, who could be present to you and see that you receive that instruction. And that's the easiest way to do it. Now, if you're looking for published resources on the internet or video format, this sort of thing, that are really designed as a substitute for RCIA, there are 2 that come to mind. One is a program produced by the Catechetical Institute called Symbolon, and it was designed specifically to be used in an RCIA context. And another one is called Credo, C-R-E-D-O, designed by the Dominican province, the Eastern Dominican province of the United States. So those are 2 online programs that would be very useful. If you're so inclined, there's the Compendium of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, or the Catechism of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Actually, when I knocked on the door of my parish and told the priest I wanted to become a Catholic, he said, well, what have you done to date? And I had recently read the Catechism. I said, well, I read the Catechism. He said, you read the whole thing? I said, well, yeah. He said, well, you don't need RCIA. Let's do this next week, And so there's any number of opportunities for you there.
All right, very good.
And we've had truck drivers in your very same situation
That's
before
right.
who couldn't make it to RCA because they were on the road, and they did what I said and found themselves a deacon or someone who could work with them, and then, came on in at Easter. So it's a good time of year to get going.
Hope that's helpful for you and your sister, Andrea. Thanks so much for your call. David, put on your, roll up to your crystal ball here for just a moment, looking ahead into the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, perhaps. You're involved in Catholic education. Do you ever see a time ahead where there might be an online version of the RCIA program? And I say that a little bit selfishly, in that not all RCIA programs are created equal. Some of them are very good. Some of the parishes, some of the dioceses really have it going on. Others do not. What do you think?
Tom Price, you've come to the right place.
Yay!
The Diocese of Birmingham in Alabama, has an online program that could be used for RCIA for free.
Wow.
It is called the Catechetical Institute. And it is a ministry of the Office of Religious Education of the Diocese of Birmingham in Alabama. And it is essentially presentations, oral presentations, live filmed presentations on all the sections of the Catechism.
Wow.
Created and the presenters are largely members of the clergy of the Diocese of Birmingham, and some lay people, lay leaders, including yours truly, who participated in the creation of that. And it really was the brainchild of Elizabeth Sutton. God have mercy on her soul.
Yes.
She's gone from us now. But she was the director of religious education for a number of years in Birmingham, and she thought the idea of creating this, when that was, she was kind of first to market. Well, now we've got a lot of these online programs, but she was one of the first people to think we need to use this new medium of YouTube and so forth to create an introduction to the Catholic faith. So check out the Office of Religious Education, Diocese of Birmingham in Alabama, the Catechetical Institute. You've got an online RCIA program at your fingertips for free.
Wow. Well, maybe somebody will make a pitch to the USCCB someday, and maybe it will become the standard. I mean, I'm just saying, because it does vary widely out there in the marketplace, and especially
could be
especially now that so many people are working from home, attending Zoom meetings, whatever. This may be a good time for that. We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much. It is Called to Communion here on EWTN. Let's go to Maura in Crown Point, Indiana, listening on Sirius XM 130. Maura, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Dr. Anders. Thanks a lot for taking my call today. The reason I'm calling, and you're the perfect person with whom to speak, is that my oldest daughter, who is 18, a freshman in college, is in a relationship with a really lovely young man, and they are discerning where that relationship's going to go. However, he is a member of the Reformed Church. And so, of course, her father and I are invested in her eternity, and, of course, in his. We love him.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have a clue as to what to even talk about with him, or how to even approach the discussion, or what would be impactful to a member of the Reformed Church about the Catholic Church that would draw him in, or... Do you know kind of what I'm getting at?
Oh, I sure do. Boy, do I ever. See, I was raised in the Reformed Church, so I was a Presbyterian, which is the same thing, basically. So good heavens, you're speaking my language here. Look, I am not tooting my own horn. I'm really not. I really believe this is the best resource I can give you. If you will go to the website calledtocommunion.com, it is only loosely affiliated with this radio show, although the title being the same is not an accident. Before I was involved in this radio program, I was involved in a website, and I'm not the only contributor. Many other contributors. All of us were members of the Reformed faith in one family or another who came to the Catholic faith. And most of the contributors to this website are former pastors, theologians, professional philosophers, people who are extremely well-schooled in the Reformed tradition, know that tradition inside and out, and yet found their way to the Catholic faith. And almost all of their stories are represented on that website, as well as some very, very good explication and argumentation about the differences and similarities between the Reformed tradition and the Catholic tradition. So I really don't know any other resource quite like it, and I highly recommend Called to Communion. It's not the best article on the site, but I wrote an article on there called How John Calvin Made Me a Catholic. And the title, of course, is provocative, and it's meant to be. So why don't you think about perhaps taking a peek at that article, How John Calvin Made Me a Catholic, as well as many of the other contributors have outstanding material on there, and see if that might be a point of conversation with this young man. Now, I do think this is something they're going to have to address at some point down the road, depending on how devout he is, because if he takes his tradition seriously, most Reformed Christians believe that you cannot be an intellectually honest Christian who's well-informed and be a Roman Catholic. Now, there may be some exceptions to that rule, but by and large, if you take the Reformed tradition seriously, you cannot hold that a person could be an intellectually honest, well-formed Christian and be a Roman Catholic, precisely because their own doctrinal statements declare that the Pope is the Antichrist, among many other things that they reject about the Catholic faith. And they formed their doctrinal positions in explicit and conscious rejection of key elements of Catholicism. So to profess the Reformed faith is de facto to reject cardinal elements of Catholic identity. And so again, like I say, depending on how seriously he takes his faith and how well informed he is, the Reformed tradition is a major impediment to getting along with a Catholic in the context of the sacrament of matrimony. Look, it's worth pointing out that one of the key differences between the Reformed tradition and the Catholic is they don't believe in the sacrament of matrimony. They believe in matrimony, but they don't believe it's a sacrament.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was John Calvin, the father of the Reformed tradition, John Calvin, who presided over the first divorce in Christian history in Geneva. And it happened when he wanted to obtain a divorce for his brother from his sister-in-law, whom Calvin did not like. Calvin didn't like his sister-in-law. And so he manufactured an accusation of adultery and subjected his sister-in-law to torture in order to compel her to confess to adultery, which she did not do. And then he authorized the divorce anyway on grounds of adultery. So, that's kind of the origin of the thing.
Wow.
And it's worth paying attention to. Now, that being said, there are many elements of the Reformed tradition that are highly amenable not to becoming Catholic, but to pointing people in the right direction so that they independently discover the truth of the Catholic faith, right? Reformed Christians tend to be very theologically minded, biblically minded, and they like systems. They like logical coherence. They want to dig down and discover the roots of things. And that's a dangerous attitude for a Protestant to take. Case in point right here.
Sure.
And they also pride themselves, I think, kind of ignorantly, but they pride themselves on being in continuity with the ancient church. They like to think that they've got the church fathers on their side. Another really dangerous attitude for a Protestant to take, right? To think that you've got the church fathers on your side. And so these things are they tend to Catholic unity if you let them go to their logical conclusion.
Okay. Appreciate your call, Maura. It is Call to Communion here on EWTN. Let's go now to Claire in Portland, Oregon, listening on Modern Day Radio, a first-time caller. Hello, Claire. What's on your mind today?
Well, hello. I was listening to the radio program, and I heard the call to communion. The one thing that might be stopping a Catholic from coming back, and that really just rang true. I was raised Roman Catholic. My great-grandparents came through Ellis Island, and I think I stopped going when I was confirmed, because I am a queer person. And as you can imagine, some things happened that made me feel pretty unwelcome. And now that I'm an adult, I have gone to some services here and there, but honestly, I'm a little bit afraid. So I'm just kind of wondering if you guys could speak to that and help me make a decision and whether or not I should sort of try to formally return, or I don't know. It's been a long time. So I listened to the radio program and I heard the call, so I thought I would just kind of call and ask the one thing.
I am so glad you called.
I'm a queer person.
I'm so glad you called. And I just want to tell you, and I know I don't just speak for myself here, but for Tom and for all of us at the network and all the Catholics that I know, we love you. We love you.
Absolutely.
And we very much hope that you can find a home in the Catholic faith, and you're welcome to come to Mass with us. And I've talked to many people exactly in your situation, and obviously they experience a great deal of struggle and trial and difficulty and torn this way and that, and that's got to be agonizing. And that sense of inner conflict and which way do I go and can I become Catholic or not? And, you've got, is this going to cost me friends? Is this going to cost me loved ones? I mean, I'm sympathetic. I really am. It's a tough place to be. And I'm sure that what you tell me about your upbringing is 100% true. And you may very well have experienced rejection and prejudice and hatred and confusion and rejection that has to have been incredibly alienating and deeply painful. For which I'm profoundly sorry, and I'm very sympathetic. I cannot promise you that your return to the Catholic faith will be seamless, smooth, and a bed of roses. But I would say that to anyone, right? I would say that to someone whether they were queer or straight or whatever, right? Your return to the Catholic faith is not going to be seamless and a bed of roses. When I came to the Catholic faith for the first time, as a married man, it was not seamless or smooth or a bed of roses. And I experienced a number of bumps along the way and continue to experience them. Because the Catholic Church is made up of, you guessed it, human beings.
Sinners.
Right, exactly. And all of us bring elements of our personal story to our Catholic identity that jar other people. All of us do. That's as true for me as it is for you and is true for Tom,
Sure.
right? And we all can experience. We can alienate one another. We can reject one another, and that's unfortunate and it's painful. But do I think it's worth doing? Of course, I think it's worth doing. Right? I mean, I get up every day, and there are elements of my Catholic identity that I find difficult, relationships that I find hard,
Sure.
homilies that I find absolutely unendurable. I mean, you name it. There's some element of the faith that's jarring. And yet, being Catholic places me in connection with Christ in a way that I cannot realize anyplace else. Anyplace else. It starts with the knowledge that the Catholic faith is exactly continuous with the church that Christ founded. And so in joining the Catholic faith, I am immediately placed into fellowship in a profound way, in a mystical way, with 2,000 years of wisdom and holiness that become my family, and that becomes my patrimony. The company of the saints in heaven, the Church triumphant, becomes my very own in a profound and meaningful way. When I am in communion with Christ in the sacrament of Holy Communion, I am not only in communion with my brothers and sisters in the pews next to me, but I am in communion with the whole company of the faithful down for 2,000 years until the end of time. St. Augustine is my man, all right? St. Thomas Aquinas, he's my man. Teresa of Avila, I mean, she's the tops. They're there with me in my Holy Communion. When I go to confession and the priest absolves me of my sins, it's Christ there absolving me. Before I was Catholic, I used to go to this Protestant college. They had a prayer chapel. And kids used to go in there and they would pour their heart and soul out to God. And they would leave prayer requests on these little sheets of these little sticky notes and put them at the table at the front of the thing. And others would go up and pick up the little sticky notes and read them. And they would be things like, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with that. I've got this sin. Please pray for me. Pray that God will help me. And, I didn't really understand it at the time, but the thought, wouldn't it be nice if God could reach down from heaven and speak directly into these people's ear and tell them that they were loved and they were forgiven and they were blessed and they were accepted? I mean, they're hoping for that. They're longing for that kind of touch, right? But the best they can do is imagine it. They can't actually experience it audibly. Well, yeah, you can. You just go to confession.
Sure.
You know, I mean, is it worth it? Absolutely. Is it going to come with difficulties? You bet. Now, what's my advice to you? I think you're calling from Portland, I believe,
Portland,
right?
yeah.
So shop around a little bit. You know, I mean, there are lots of different parishes. Parishes, you have different people. From parish to parish, you can get slightly different culture. So don't, if you walk in and you don't make a friend right away, don't give up. You know, you can stay there a few weeks, go down the street, try another parish, reach out, look for people of common interests and background and struggles and similarities. Most of my Catholic friends, I've kind of culled together from, different holes in the wall. Like, they don't all go to Mass with me. I've kind of built a Catholic community around myself of like-minded people. In other words, like really idiosyncratic nut jobs, like me. And it works for me. It works for me, and it'll work for you too.
Sure.
There are some ministries out there specifically geared towards helping people in your situation find a home. One of them is an apostolate called Courage. And you'll find a lot of warmth and acceptance and hope and healing from people who are coming at this from the very same angle that you are, and they're entirely oriented towards helping you find your place in the world as a Catholic.
Courage is a wonderful, wonderful organization. Claire, thank you so much for your call. Would love to follow up with you, but we're running out of hour here, and we've got to get to as many calls as we can today. But thank you again for your call. We hope that is helpful for you. Let's go now to Barbara in Boise, Idaho, listening on Sirius XM 130. Barbara, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Dr. Anders. My question is about believing in something you can't see, and knowing that the faith is beautiful and it has a wonderful message, and we want to believe. Sometimes I feel like we just get pulled back 10,000 feet and go, but wait, there's actually nobody here. Actually, nobody on earth can see this God, and I don't know that he's even hearing me. How do you deal with that?
Okay, I've got a couple things to say. First of all, do you believe in other minds?
Yes.
Okay, you believe I have a mind and Tom Price has a mind?
Yes.
Can you see them?
No.
No, you can't see them.
I've seen pictures of you, and I know your brain's in there.
Right, but I didn't ask if you could see brains. I asked you if you could see minds, and you can't see our minds. But you have evidence that there's a mind in there someplace, okay? Can you see the Pythagorean theorem? I'm not asking if you can see a symbolic depiction of the mathematical relations that are captured in the Pythagorean theorem. That, of course, you can see. I can write the formula on a blackboard. Can you see the Pythagorean theorem?
No.
No,
I guess
you
not.
can't. Can you see the structure of an atom? Not can you see an illustration in a chemistry book that's meant to capture in a way that's actually not accurate, because they're really not accurate, the mathematical relations that we call the center of an atom, but can you see the center of an atom?
No.
No, you can't. Can you see the value in another rational agent, a person, or even for that matter, maybe the value in some organic entity like a dog or a cat, even that would compel you in conscience not to wantonly kill it. If you're driving down the road and there's an animal in front of you, and you have to make the decision to step on the gas or the brake, and you say, look, what I see is a lump of moist carbon, right? That's all I see. Fur, teeth, fangs. What I don't actually see the inherent value of the object that makes it something that's intrinsically worth keeping alive. That's not something that you see. It's something, at the very least, you have some sort of intuitive grasp of. So moral value would be another real quality in the world that you know is there, but you do not see. Okay? Now, I've pointed to lots of different types of things that we know to be real that we do not see. We don't see moral values. We don't see mathematical relations. We don't see consciousness. All right? We don't see any of those things. But we know that the universe is pervaded by them. everywhere. In all of our experience is qualified by our awareness that these things are constitutive elements of reality. To a certain extent, we don't see them as much as we see by them. We see through them. We see by means of them. Now, that consciousness, rationality, mathematical relations, value, these are the things that structure our experience such that the world before us becomes alive with meaning and intelligibility, right? Now, if you bring that awareness, like, to your whole experience of reality, you recognize that, okay, everything that's here is sort of structured in such a way that my inner sense of value and proportion and meaning and consciousness and intelligibility is somehow proportionate to the world outside of me. Like, it's not just something interior to me. It's in a participatory way, dynamically related to the events around me. It's not just something subjectively within me. And the very depths of mystery and power that lie in the heart of the atom that I cannot see also lie within my own conscious experience, within my own soul. And the great mystery of reality is that the origin of these two mysteries is the same, right? That the God who made the atom, that principle of rationality and intelligibility, the divine logos, the one beyond all being who stands at the back of all of this, right, is the same reality that lies at the heart of my own soul. And so the cry of St. Augustine, "Our hearts are restless, O Lord, until they rest in Thee," has a profound metaphysical basis, right? And realizing that the depth within me and the depth within the atom are both reconciled in the one who is beyond all division, right? That one ground and source of the intelligibility of the universe is the spiritual move that you make to more than just a fideistic acceptance, just a raw act of faith, but a deep rational participation in Him in whom we live and move and have our being.
Barbara, thank you so much for your call. Couldn't get to Joe here in Birmingham, or John, or Bob. Please call us back on Monday. We'll get to you as at the top of the show. Hey, Dr. David Anders, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.
Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Keep it right here on EWTN to make that weekend even better. I'm Tom Price. We will see you next time. God bless.